Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Sainthood Ministries podcast. I'm your host, Randy Barenfein, and today we're going to be dismantling 4 common pro-choice slogans. So one of my goals with this channel, with the Sainthood movement, is to bring Christ to the culture and show that embracing Christian values will help society thrive. I think abortion is bad for society for many reasons, but mainly because it is an affront to the sanctity of life and encourages us to treat life as if it's not valuable. I'd like to expand upon this further in a future video, but today we're going to be focusing on the poor logic of 4 arguments often used to defend the practice of abortion. I'm formerly known on YouTube as the Faithful Millennial, so you can check out some additional content of mine on these platforms under that name. And with that said, let's just get right into the video. So the first slogan that we're going to tackle is mind your business. So this is where a pro-choicer will essentially argue that a woman has the right to abort by appealing to some sort of right to privacy. So they'll say something along the lines of a woman's decision whether or not to continue with her pregnancy should be between her and her doctor, right? This is actually the strategy that Norma McCorvey's lawyers used in 1971 when she sued the state of Texas for not letting her abort her 3rd child. The laws of Texas at that time forbid a woman from having an abortion unless the life and health of the mother was at stake. So this case famously became known as Roe v. Wade. And in 1973, when it went to the Supreme Court ruled that there's some sort of ambiguous, vague right to privacy in the 14th Amendment, I believe, that protects a woman's right to have an abortion, right? And of course, this was overturned in 2022 because the Supreme Court recognized that there is no right to privacy that would protect a woman's right to kill another person. Now, I would like to affirm that women should be able to make private healthcare decisions for themselves without government interference until those decisions harm another person, right? So if I were looking at my neighbor in his backyard and I observe that he's absolutely destroying a bunch of his possessions, that's his right, and I'm not going to really have anything to say about that. However, if I were to see my neighbor just mercilessly beating his son, the appropriate thing for me to do would be to call 911, right? Because our children are not our property, right? We don't own them, right? Now, funny enough, the same would apply to pets or animals, right? If I were to see my neighbor just mercilessly beating his dog, I would still call 911 or animal control, even though legally he owns the dog, right? And this is because we recognize that life is valuable, that children are worthy of our protection, and that their safety should be prioritized over an individual's right to privacy, right? So it's just morally abominable to treat the unborn as if they're just property that we can privately butcher and dispose of. The second slogan that we're going to look at is, it's just a clump of cells, right? This one gets thrown around a lot, and it's very straightforward. It's just a claim that there isn't anything being killed when an abortion is performed, right? The thing inside the woman's womb is not alive, right? The only problem with this slogan is that it is demonstrably false. All right, so if you were to take a biology class in middle school, high school, or to look at an intro to biology textbook, you are going to see a clear, unambiguous criteria for what constitutes a life, right? This is why any middle schooler can defeat this argument, right? If you take a biology class, you're going to learn that in order for something to be considered alive, it's got to be composed of at least one cell. It's got to have DNA. It's got to respond to stimuli. It has to be growing. All right. A fetus possesses all of these properties. So don't let anybody ever gaslight you in a conversation by making it sound as if, well, scientists aren't clear about when life begins. The embryology is not clear. Like, we don't know what life is. That's nonsense. I've never seen a scientific criteria for what constitutes a life that would disqualify an unborn fetus. All right, but don't take it from me. All right, here's footage of several pro-choice advocates who would support legal abortion, just conceding the point that the unborn are living human beings.
Oh, absolutely. So when you put up a scenario of trying to put out a hit with the mafia, you are talking about murdering a born, living, conscious, sentient, autonomous person. When we talk about abortion, we are talking about ending a non-autonomous life.
An argument that's concerned with whether or not the fetus is human and whether or not the fetus is alive. I think anyone in this room would be hard-pressed to be able to make that statement, right? It's been proven. It's indisputable. The fetus is alive and the fetus is human.
Now, Stephanie has been arguing largely in her discussion that the embryo from conception and the fetus is a human being. And many people think that that is the crucial issue in the abortion debate. And therefore, people are in favor of allowing abortion, saying abortion is not immoral, argue that the embryo and fetus is not a human being. I don't take that line. I agree that from conception, or arguably some days after conception, I'll come to that in a moment, but basically from conception, there is a living member of the species Homo sapien.
All right, slogan number 3 is my body, my choice. All right, this is certainly the most popular slogan that we will hear, right? This is the anthem of the pro-choice side. You will never have an abortion argument where someone doesn't say this, right? And it's where the pro-choicer will assert that a woman has the right to do whatever she wants with her body as she sees fit. She alone can decide what happens to her body. Right. The issue with this one, I really have 2 issues with this line of reasoning. Okay. Now, generally speaking, they are correct that women have a right to do whatever they want with their body. Where the real issue comes in is that pro-choicers seem, at least to me, to argue that women have like a sovereign right to do whatever they want with their body, meaning that the right is just so fundamental that nothing could ever override or supersede it. All right. I have 2 problems with that line of reasoning. All right. The first problem is that a woman's right to her body is not sovereign. All right. And the claim it is to get into some dicey territory. I think it's actually very controversial, a lot more than people initially think. I think we could think of examples where someone's right to do what they want with their body would not be sovereign. So suppose, for example, you are a high school teacher and in your class, you notice sitting in the front row is a young lady that is using the blade from a pair of scissors to cut her wrist. All right. And let's say you run up to her, you grab her by the arm, you pry the scissors out of her hand, and she starts yelling in protest, "You can't do that. You are violating my right to bodily autonomy." If you believe that a woman's right to do what she wants with her body is sovereign, then you really ought to just let her sit there and cut herself, right? But none of us would do that, right? And that's because we recognize that there should be laws that prevent people from hurting themselves and others, right? This is why we also have laws that forbid people from doing certain drugs, all right? If a guy is on the street and he's shooting up heroin, he's going to be arrested, all right? And he's not going to be able to protest that he should be able to put whatever drugs and substances he wants in his body because he has a right to do whatever he wants with his body. So it's not clear at all that the right to do what you want with your body is so fundamental that it can never be violated under any circumstance. So we can deny bodily autonomy for the protection of drug addicts and, teenagers with mental health issues. Why can't we do the same for the defenseless children in the womb? The second major problem that I think the pro-choice side faces is the obvious reality that the unborn child is not a part of the woman's body. So you can talk all you want about how a woman has a right to her body, but it's very obvious that the child inside of her womb is not just another part of her body that she can do whatever she wants with. And we can acknowledge that the fetus is a separate entity from the woman, a whole separate person. Then the question becomes, why would the fetus not have its own right to bodily autonomy? No fetus in the history of mankind has ever consented to being ripped apart in the womb. However, Planned Parenthood takes it upon itself to do that over 300 times, over 300,000 times, excuse me, every single year. That's not something the pro-choice side can afford to just keep ignoring. The last slogan for this video will be this one. All right. You're not really pro life, you're just pro birth. All right. This one I find particularly frustrating. What the pro choicers is getting at here is that, pro lifers will fight tooth and nail to make sure that a baby is born, but they don't care about the baby's quality of life after it's born. All right. So they'll point out how the foster care system is extremely broken and pro lifers don't do anything to fix it. They're not willing to adopt kids themselves. They vote against things like universal health care and all of these things, right? Anticipation of future struggles is no justification for treating someone like they're not a person and killing them. All right. If you were a white pro-slavery person in the fall of 1862, all right, Abraham Lincoln just proposed the Emancipation Proclamation, but you want to keep the blacks enslaved. You might have argued that the endeavor of setting them free would have involved all sorts of hardships for them. All right. They're going to have struggles providing for themselves. They're no longer going to have that slave master that's, giving them, feeding them enough that they could at least stay alive. You might point out that, they would have struggles getting employed, given that none of them could read, and all of these other hardships. Anyone today could clearly see that none of those reasons would justify keeping them enslaved. And you certainly wouldn't approach an abolitionist of the time and beyond some, how could you advocate for the freedom of the blacks? Are you going to teach them how to read? Are you going to employ them? Are you going to give them your private property so they don't have to worry about being homeless? As an abolitionist, I don't have to solve every problem the black community is going to face once being freed in order to fight for their right to be free in the first place. And in a similar way, I, as a pro-lifer, don't have to solve every social issue that families face when trying to provide for their children in order to say that they shouldn't be able to kill their children. And on top of that, the claim that pro-lifers don't do anything for these women is just plainly false. All right. There are so many organizations and pregnancy centers such as Birthright, Beacon of Light, Aid for Women, the Sisters of Life, Let Them Live, that provide so much aid and resources for women with unplanned pregnancies every year that it's just demonstrably false that that's not true. All right. They do so much to make sure that these women are not afraid and actually feel like they have an option besides abortion that give them the confidence they need to be able to choose life and raise their babies. Right. If you are ever arguing with someone that makes this claim that pro-lifers are just pro-birth, ask them to name several organizations that help women with unplanned pregnancies, and they probably won't be able to name any, maybe one. And that's because they've never bothered to actually do some research and find out for themselves whether or not pro-lifers are just all talk. All right, so I hope that if you watched the entirety of this video, I was able to offer some thoughts and insights that you had not previously considered. If you're a pro-life person who doesn't really feel super comfortable arguing with people about abortion, I hope that this video empowered you to feel like you can do that better. If you're someone who's on the fence about the issue of abortion, I hope that you were able to see the logical inconsistencies of the pro-choice position. And if you're like super far on the other side of the spectrum, heavy pro-abortion, then we will pray that you have a change of heart and see that life is to be cherished and valued. Thanks for watching this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like and comment down below to let me know what your thoughts were. I will see you guys on the next video. Take care and have a great day.